Picture a sound so haunting it crawls into your skull and rewires your brain until you can't trust your own mind. 1972. Backwoods America. Late-night radios started picking up something that shouldn't exist. Phantom broadcasts. Static that whispered back. A frequency that left whole communities shattered. Tonight, we're cracking open the strangest chapter in American folklore, the midnight frequency. Once you hear this, you'll never sleep with the radio on again. In the early 70s, no smartphones, no internet, no instant news. Out in the sticks, your radio was your whole world. Not just entertainment, your only lifeline. Morning news, afternoon music, evening stories. But somewhere in that static, something started transmitting that was never in any official record. Some say the government buried it. Some say it was mass hysteria. And some folks, even today, swear something other than a human was on the other end.
So here's the question, folks. Are you ready to hear about the frequency that destroyed an entire generation of listeners? Because once you know this story, you'll never look at an old radio the same way again. This is Midnight Frequency, and the rabbit hole goes way deeper than you think.
By 1970, community radio was exploding all over rural America. Electricity hadn't reached every farmstead, but battery-powered radios were getting cheaper by the month. One radio set became the center of the whole house. Sometimes the entire family, heck, the whole neighborhood, would gather around a single box. Especially in the back roads of Indiana, Ohio, and Iowa, folks kept their radios running well past 11 at night. And the reason was simple. Some stations broadcast from hundreds of miles away, and at night, atmospheric conditions made those signals stronger. We call it ionospheric skip today. Basically, certain radio frequencies could travel way farther than they were supposed to. But right in the middle of that scientific explanation, an unexplained pattern started showing up. Between 12:13 and 12:19 in the morning, regular broadcasts would suddenly start to distort.
Paragraph 6. The music slowed down. Voices stretched out like taffy. Static swelled. And then a pulse would come through. Rhythmic, deliberate, mechanical. But it didn't sound fully mechanical. And it didn't sound fully human either. Like a heartbeat, but not from any human chest. At first, folks figured it was just a transmitter issue. Local glitch, bad wiring. But the problem ran deeper than that. Different towns, different radios, different stations. But the timing was identical, and the pulse was identical. Across hundreds of miles of cornfields and back roads, the same beat, the same moment, every single night. That, my friends, is not a coincidence. Something was synchronizing, and it was doing it on purpose. The very first documented case came out of a tiny town in southern Indiana. A school teacher named Mr. Brody told cops he'd been listening to the late broadcast when a strange rhythm cut through the static. He leaned in, turned the volume up. The pulse got louder, and then he heard a whisper, faint, slow, like somebody was talking right up against his ear, even though the room was empty. Can you hear me? Mr. Brody figured he was just tired, hallucinating, so he shut the radio off. But the voice didn't stop. The whisper kept right on coming. That night, he didn't sleep a wink. By morning, he had to tell somebody. So he told his neighbors. And that's when things got really weird, because 3 of them said the same thing.
they'd heard whispers the night before too. Different words, different voices, but the same impossible moment.
One guy said the voice had called him by name. A woman in town swore she heard her late mother's voice coming through the static. And a young widow said she heard her dead brother, clear as day, telling her to come outside. The frequency wasn't broadcasting one message. It was reaching into each listener's subconscious and pulling something personal out. Something the listener thought was buried forever. Over the next few weeks, reports flooded in. People said that buried inside the static, a voice was whispering to them. Some were being called by name. Some heard a single haunting phrase. Come outside. Someone is waiting for you. Others heard a softer question. Can you hear me? Over and over and over. And the strangest part of all, those whispers were almost impossible to record. Folks tried everything. Reel-to-reel machines, cassette decks, even reel-to-reel broadcast equipment. The pulses came through clean on playback. The static came through fine. But the whispers? Gone. Every time. Like the voice only existed in the exact moment of listening. A retired radio engineer named Frank pulled some archived samples, ran them through every filter he had, and made it official. There was a human voice pattern hidden in the signal, but the layering was completely unnatural. Multiple voices overlapping at once, Frank said, like a chorus trying to say 1,000 things at the same time. When he slowed the waveform down, some listeners claimed they heard chattering underneath, almost like Sanskrit chanting looping over itself. Others said it sounded like a made-up language, and a few swore there was no language at all, just a sound that had never come out of any human throat. First came the whispers. Then came the sleep problems. In every affected town, the same sick pattern started showing up. Folks would go to bed, but their bodies couldn't shut down. Eyes closed, but the brain kept running wide open, like some invisible signal was keeping them stimulated on a loop. 3 days without sleep. 5. A full week. People started cracking, irritable, aggressive, scared of their own shadow. Mothers said their babies wouldn't stop staring at the ceiling, wide awake, hour after hour. Old-timers swore they heard footsteps right outside the back door. Slow, deliberate, dragging. They'd grab the shotgun, swing the door wide open. Nothing out there but the dark and the wind. Doctors were stumped. They ran every test they had. No physical illness, no fever, no infection. But the mental strain was off the charts. The whole town was running on empty. And when a person doesn't sleep, folks, reality starts to bend. After the insomnia came the second stage, auditory hallucinations. And this is where things got really, really dark. People started hearing voices without the radio, in empty rooms, out in the fields while they were working. Voices calling their name. Voices that knew things they shouldn't know. A woman named Margaret told deputies her son had been calling out to her every single night from the parlor, calling her name, begging her to come to him. The problem? Her son hadn't been home in months. He was living up in Chicago, hadn't called once, hadn't written. Some folks figured she'd finally lost her marbles. But Margaret didn't look crazy. She looked terrified, the kind of terrified that doesn't wash off. Then there was Dale Whitaker, a farmer, mid-40s, no history of mental illness, no reason to wander.
But every night for a week, Dale said something was telling him to walk. Same direction, same road, same pace. 3 nights in, his wife found him gone. By morning, searchers found his body at the bottom of a dry stone well about a mile from the farm. When police wrapped up their report, the official cause of death was an accident. But the town knew better. Dale had been called.
And Dale wasn't the only one. Over the next several months, the bodies kept turning up. People found at the bottom of wells, others on the railroad tracks, a few in the woods right at the tree line. None of them had any signs of a struggle. No defensive wounds, no claw marks, nothing. They looked like they'd walked into danger on purpose, willingly, almost like they were answering a question nobody else could hear.
So what was it? Sleepwalking? Hypnosis? Some kind of shared psychosis? Or was it something none of those words could even touch? Whatever it was, it left a diary behind. One of the missing had been writing things down in the weeks before he disappeared. And the final entry? It chills me every time I read it. The radio is off. I can still hear the frequency. And then the next line. The voice is getting clearer now. And the final line. Just one sentence. I'm coming. The next morning, that man was found dead. At this point, panic was inevitable. Town meetings every night. Folks unplugging their radios, smashing antennas, throwing batteries into the creek. But here's the part that still doesn't sit right. It didn't matter. The affected could still hear the frequency. Radio off, antenna down, battery in the river. The voice still came. Which raises one terrifying question. Was the radio even the source? Or was the radio just the front door? Years later, a stack of original broadcast tapes resurfaced in a forgotten state archive basement. When researchers digitized them, they found what folks in 1972 had described almost word for word. Normal static layered over a low hum, rhythmic pulses, and every few minutes, a spectral voice structure, even on cold playback. But when they ran noise reduction, the room got divided. Some claimed they heard names buried in the waveform. Others heard nothing but hiss. And that, my friends, was its own kind of mystery. The ones who believed, they heard voices. The skeptics heard nothing but noise. Psychology folks will tell you the human brain loves finding patterns in randomness. They call it pareidolia. But the believers had a dead simple counter. If it was just noise, how did hundreds of strangers in different towns all develop the exact same symptoms? How did they all hear their own dead relatives calling? That question doesn't go away easy. According to a few long-retired officials, federal teams did quietly monitor the transmissions. Temporary stations set up in remote areas, monitoring equipment running 24 hours a day. But here's the kicker. Not a single public report was ever released. After a few months, the broadcasts just stopped. No press conference, no official explanation, no closure. The whole thing got swept into a drawer somewhere, and the drawer got locked. Some say the government jammed the frequency. Others say they tracked the source and destroyed whatever was generating it. And a stubborn few insist the source was never gone, just dormant, just waiting. Pick whichever one keeps you up at night. Because honestly, None of them feel good. So what was it, really? 3 theories have stuck around all these years, and none of them are comfortable. The first one, and this is the cleanest explanation, says it was a secret psychological experiment. The early 70s were the middle of the Cold War. Mind influence research, subliminal messaging, radio wave weapons studies. The US was knee-deep in it, just like the Soviets. Was Midnight Frequency some black budget program that got out of hand?
Theory number 2. Mass hysteria. And look, fear is contagious. One person hears a whisper, tells the whole town, and by next week, the whole county's hearing things. Crowd psychology's a real thing. People start matching each other's symptoms. Shared delusion on a massive scale. Could it be that simple? Honestly, maybe. But mass hysteria doesn't usually leave behind a stack of bodies at the bottom of dry wells. Just saying.
And then there's Theory 3, the one that makes this whole thing truly terrifying. What if the frequency wasn't coming from any human source at all? Radio waves are invisible. We can't see them. We can only receive them. We've spent 100 years assuming every signal out there was generated by us. But what if, just maybe, we were wrong? What if something else has been transmitting too? And 1972 was the first time it really got our attention. Even today, old ham radio collectors across the Midwest pass around the same warning. If you ever sweep an old analog tuner across the deep static bands after midnight, you might catch a pulse, just a single rhythmic thump in the white noise. And here's the part they all say the same way. If you ever hear a whisper in the static that calls you by name, do not answer. Because some signals, once they receive a reply, don't ever truly stop transmitting. If this story got under your skin, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a video. We dig up the real, mysterious, and sometimes straight-up terrifying stories the rest of the world has tried to forget. Drop a comment below. What was the Midnight Frequency really? Government experiment, mass hysteria, or something none of us can explain? And if you ever hear something strange in the static, you let me know. Until next time, this is Riley Hart, signing off.